Hello, everyone. I am back. This is Dr. Vanessa with another great show. It is April Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I am so excited because I have amazing guests all month long. So I'm with Hush No More for those that do not know. And we support survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, human trafficking, child sexual abuse, all of that crap that people go through, right? But that we don't talk about. So we're going to talk about it here. And I'm going to do a different format, which I'm really excited about, where I want to ask some questions and see the response that I get from my guests. So I'm going to ask things like, what is your hush topic? What was the moment that you realized that you needed to make a change in your life? What does healing look like for you, right? And where are you now? Because I think that's the good part, not always the sad part, but knowing that people are doing some amazing things. And so I'm really grateful for today. I'm grateful that you all are here and joining us. And before I get started, before I forget, I want to make sure that I highlight my sponsor of the show today, which is Cocoa Wicks. They do some amazing candles. It's cocoawickscandles.com. They gave us a coupon code, y'all. Lynn gave us a coupon code, and I'm really excited about that. The code is DRV20. So you get 20% off of your candles if you order from her. And that is the Hush No More code. So DRV20. If you're listening to the podcast, go to Cocoa Wicks Candles and get you some real beautiful coconut candles. They're fresh, they're beautiful, and I really like them a lot. All right. With that being said, I want to introduce my amazing guest today. I have Jo Lauren with me from Incest Aware, and we are going to have a great conversation about incest and just where life is going and just journeys and things that a lot of you will be able to relate to. So this is what we want to talk about today. So welcome, Jo. welcome to the show. What is your hush topic?
Dr. Vanessa, thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today, and hello to everyone who is watching. My hush topic is incest abuse. I am a survivor as well as the co-founder of Incest Aware, and really excited to share your platform to talk more about this taboo and stigmatized topic.
Yes. So I am really honored because we've met a couple of years ago in person, but we met online at first through the organization Incest Aware. So why did you start Incest Aware? Like how did that come about, knowing that your past? Like what is that journey from you at the beginning?
That's such a great question. Time can be a really funny thing for incest survivors because so many of us have dissociative amnesia, or we forget what was happening when it was happening in order to survive our childhoods. This is specifically true for people if your provider was also your perpetrator. So in my case, my father was one of my abusers. I couldn't really make sense of the fact that he was hurting me and providing for me at the same time. So I just, I forgot the memories or repressed the memories. And then when I was 24, the memories resurfaced. And I fell into what I call now the incest gap, where I was in really like a state of crisis for 15 years after that, because of the lack of prevention, intervention, recovery, and justice methods that keep children safe in their homes, that support survivors and families in their healing journey, that ensure that people can't offend in the first place or reoffend. And eventually, through my own storytelling, healing journey, integration journey, I started meeting other survivors. And I met Suzanne Zaza, who had this vision to found Incest Aware. So she launched the first website, built the first handful of organizers, and then invited me to help her build it out. We really wanted to build a digital platform that was devoted to anti-incest work and literature because there's so little good anti-incest work online at the time. And then it's been growing from there. So she ran it for a few years and then handed it off to me. And it's really exciting to see how far we've come.
Yes. And I love Suzanne, and I was very grateful to even be part of Incest Aware to be able to support, because it's big and we don't talk about it, right? Mm-hmm. And especially when it is a parent, a sibling, the closer I feel like the individual is to you, the least we talk about it, right?
You got it.
The least. So When you were triggered, because essentially it was a trigger at 24 and you found out everything that came back,
Mm-hmm.
how did you respond to that when your memories came back? Like, what was it, like a conversation with your mom? What did that look like?
Yeah, my own journey, it definitely evolved. I, left my house at 18 and I had the privilege to go to college. So went right to college and started to have a lot of psychosomatic symptoms. So just like I got really, really ill really fast. And I would go to doctors and they were like, we don't know what's wrong with you. At the same time, I was having night terrors of being sexually abused almost every night. I had this like intense paranoia of sexual abuse and started really isolating myself from the college scene and from parties. And I would like run across campus at night because I was so afraid of being abused. Eventually, other people in my family started to uncover that they had been sexually abused. And so the pieces kind of started to fall into place for me. But my memories came back when I was actually like no longer financially dependent on my family. So I was in graduate school, living on student loans and work study, but was pretty far away from home and was finally kind of out of the family system. And that's what really enabled me to remember. And then um I don't know how you make sense of dealing with something like that, except that it's a process. And so in the beginning, I just asked for space from my family and they wouldn't grant that because my family has no sense of boundaries. And then I just started to kind of rebuild my life. At some point, I started engaging with them again, like engaging with different family members again, the ones who didn't offend, and eventually decided like no contact was best for me, and really just focused on my healing journey, which then became an activist journey, which then became, my professional journey. So here we are.
And here we are. Do do your family really believe you? Did they believe you, or believe all the victims in your family? Was there some that didn't
So
believe it?
I got a lot of different responses, and I like telling my story because families react with this with so much nuance. And so some of the responses I got were like, your story doesn't add up, disbelief. Some of my responses were like, okay, we believe you, but you should forgive him. Or like, yeah, he did that to me too, but like family first. Family's more important than safety. Um, or like, why are you always making yourself into such a victim? Or just silence. There were all sorts of ways that people in my family responded, but no one responded with support, care, accountability, not one person.
Not one person. Yeah. And
Mm-mm.
I think there's an expectation that people do. And I also think that people don't know how to respond. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you do when someone in your family tells you that they were molested or they were raped or they were abused? And how do you navigate that? What are the things that you say? And I don't think nobody in our community, like, we don't talk about it enough to say, hey, believe your child, do an investigation. But for you, it was, you were an adult, right? And who
Yeah.
tells this? For me, you don't want to go through the backlash of telling this and all of the crap that comes with it.
Yeah, family betrayal is really common, unfortunately. And that's true if children disclose or if adults disclose. Obviously, if children disclose, there's another level of complexity there because children's civil rights are so different than adult civil rights. But yeah, Judith Herman is this great researcher who did a lot of work on incest, and she talks about how it's so much easier to side with the people who harmed because all they ask for you is silence. Whereas in the case of incest, especially, believing the victim and or survivor means often, you know, uh, encountering or holding people accountable who you're really close to, who you love, who you may be economically dependent on or ontologically dependent on, right? You may share their last name, the sense of identity. Your nuclear family might be the safest or the most grounding foundation for your life, and incest disclosures can really disrupt that. Too often the victim or the survivor is blamed for that disruption, but of course it is always the person who harmed and their behavior that is responsible for it.
I always say, don't take the eyes off of, I call them creeps, abusers, but my safe word is creeps. Don't take your eyes off of them, and don't blame
Mhm.
the victim because they came forward and disrupting the family. That's, to me, that's
Mhm.
crazy. Like, you came forward to say, hey, this happened to me. Maybe we could take some protect somebody else in the family. Maybe others would come forward. And I actually
Yeah.
think that is courageous, because a lot of times people do not ever come forward, especially when it's your father. How hard
Right.
is that? Yeah. The closer the individual is, the harder it is, I think. So, um, kudos. I am proud of you. I know I
For the rest of my life, Dr. Vanessa.
so now you're an advocate and it was part of your life. I know that it had to be hard at that point. And then to suppress the memory for so many years. That's
Mhm.
right. And I will hear people say, well, she never said anything when she was younger, not understanding the brain,
Mhm.
not understanding.
Also, my family, even when I disclosed as an adult, didn't support me. So why would I have disclosed into that family system as a child when I was that much more vulnerable? There's an assumption that disclosure equals support, care, positive intervention. But in the cases of incest, it most often doesn't. And so again, stop blaming the survivor or the victim for all of this dysfunction when it's the family system, it's our social systems, and victims are just trying to navigate the complexity of it all.
Mhm. Trying to figure it out. Trying to
Yeah.
figure. I've seen individuals who said it was their grandfather and their father, mother, grandmother, brother, sister, same sex. A lot of times it does not matter, right? How
Got
do
it.
you feel about how people discuss incest? How do you feel about it? Do you think they do it right?
I don't think people discuss incest generally. And when they do, it's in really unusual contexts. It's often like sensationalized in the media. I think White Lotus was a TV series recently that had an incest scene. Or if they're talking about it, they're talking about it as like the butt of their joke. But it's not. I think there's a lot of confusion about what incest even is and how it's defined. And I think that's a part of the social oppression against this issue is it's really hard for people to talk about things that there isn't a common language for. And so that's one of the goals of Incest Aware is to really help educate people on language options when it comes to incest. And so in the law, incest often means consensual sex between adults who are related. And then what it means to be related differs by state. Whereas like child sexual abuse or rape laws would hold things like my story where I was sexually abused by people in my family as a child. Um, Intrafamilial child sexual abuse is a phrase that researchers are using and academics are using to help kind of like differentiate from the confusion that incest can refer to both consensual and non-consensual sexual relations between family members. Incest Aware uses the word incest because we want people to use that word without stigma and shame and feel like it's just a word, and if we can't use a word we obviously can't solve a problem. But also there's a lot of data about what people are searching for on the internet, and there's a lot of incest related key phrases, so we know like a lot of the public is using this word incest to try to understand the issue, and we want to make sure that we're meeting them where they're at.
I don't like the research version. I think that it makes it all fancy. It makes it proper.
Yeah.
It gives it this proper title. Like, I don't really like molestation. I don't like that either. Like, I prefer to say rape, because I
Right.
want you to feel like this is bad. If we
Right.
change to something professional and proper, then people won't have that impact. Like,
Mhm.
whoa, this is a really word that touches us that we could do something about. Now, that's just my opinion. But I don't like the
I agree.
fancy, advanced level theory, because theory doesn't always apply to the human and what you
Right.
experience.
Right.
So I think that's good.
Also, intrafamilial sexual abuse is just a mouthful. Like, I don't want to say I'm an intrafamilial child sexual abuse survivor. I just want to say I'm an incest survivor. Like, we're done.
That's it.
But
Right.
everyone has their own. This is at Incest Aware. We take an informed consent approach. So we just tell people what the options are, and then they can choose for themselves what they like the best.
You choose for yourself. And I think that's important to give people their power back. You define it how you want to define it. If you're a victim, you're a victim. If you're a survivor, you're a survivor. If you're a warrior, like, I like when people define it themselves. I think that's big. So I would never make it very complicated. I want to keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's just
identify as tired, Dr. Vanessa.
I got it.
I'm a tired incest survivor.
I got a question because I think parents be wanting to know this. Was it something that your parents could have done to protect you? Your mom. It's hard when it's your dad. Was there something that you think that as parents that we could do to protect our children and our grandchildren?
There's so much that you can do to protect kids from sexual violence in all contexts, but especially in the home. I think, teaching kids anatomically appropriate body language, if that's appropriate within your cultural context. If not, teaching them some sort of language so that everyone's on the same page about a child's body, so they know what language to use if they're being harmed. Teaching consent culture in your family just in general. It's not just about not touching each other's genitals. It's also about not stealing food from each other's plates, or, not barging into someone's space when they don't want you to. And then a lot of what I think is really important is that people are modeling safe behavior as adults, even for kids outside of their family system. So the research shows that kids who have like what is called a buffer, or someone who models to them a safe, appropriate form of love, it's so much easier for them once they do disclose. And if there is safe intervention, it's so much easier for them to kind of recover or integrate the story because they have a model or a memory of safe love and care. If you don't have that, it can be really difficult to kind of like conceptualize it later in life. So just know that, like, if you are committed to being a safe adult in your family, to also commit to being a safe adult in your community. And you just never know what impact that's making on the kids in your community.
I think that's big. I found that the conversation should be had when you're an infant. So I always talk about when you're changing the diaper, this is the safe space, right? This is only for mommy and daddy. Now, in your case, I wouldn't want to say daddy because we don't even know when it's the family. It's so hard to really it. Like, it's really hard. And even to get people in their mind that look around your circle to protect your children, look around to see what's a little weird. But when they're babies, changing the diaper, this is mommy, only mommy and daddy touches this. You have a voice, you have a choice, telling them that, giving them that power. I think it's so important. Definitely talking about the real body parts, not the nicknames, and keeping our kids safe.
Yeah. And I think, you don't realize. Sorry, Dr. Vanessa, you're cutting out a bit.
You could go.
Okay. Sorry, you're catching up now. Yeah, like we say that people that like the safe older adults in your life are able to touch your genitals in order to keep you clean, right? And like that's all. Or like if it's a doctor, but it's also just good to educate them on what unsafe touch could be, or that people who are your safe adults might cross a line, and like when that happens, what to do, right? There's a little one in my life who is so fun, and it's been really interesting learning with him as I kind of raise him as an auntie in his life. And he started kind of regressing when it comes to toilet, like potty training recently, where he was just like going to the bathroom more in his pants, and that can be a symptom of sexual abuse. And so it can also be a symptom of 1,000 other things, so it's not an immediate red flag, but I just wanted to check in with him about it. And so I was like figuring out how I could say it to him in a way that wouldn't feel threatening. And so I just said, hey, like body check, safety body check. I want to have a little safety body check in with you. And he's like, okay. and I just said, is anyone like putting anything inside your body parts, like in your eyes or in your ears or in your nose or in your bottom, like just to give him these examples of like, is someone touching you inappropriately? And he was like, nope. And I was like, okay, like that's the end of that conversation. But there's nothing wrong with having these body safety check-ins with kids. And often if you ask, kids will tell you, like, oh yeah, and you have to listen for it because they might not have the exact language, but just like, yeah, actually this kind of strange thing happened, or this happened at school, or, so I just, yeah, I think if families are talking about it, if families are using the language as if it's normal in the household, in the community, it's not only gonna help make the conversation easier to have if something does happen, but it's also gonna discourage people who harm from harming within those communities, because people who harm tend to harm within communities that have that practice a lot of silence around the issue.
Yeah, when they're verbal, when we give them the permission. Yeah, I always say you have a voice and you have a choice, and if it makes you feel uncomfortable, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not sure, let me know. Like if you like, I didn't like that. I didn't like what they said to me. Come and let me know, especially with my grandkids. I have 3 grandbabies. And so I make sure that conversation, if you feel uncomfortable, just come and talk to me about it and we could just process it. Or you don't have to sit on such and such lap. You don't have to give a person a hug. And I think that children are a great judge of characters, and they should have permission to say no. Not, oh, go give your uncle a hug or go sit, in their lap. And I just don't agree with that. I think our children should have a right to say no.
All the time, right? Like not even just with intimate touch, but like, hey, I don't want to be picked up right now. Hey, I don't want to be tickled right now. Hey, I like the other day, I like brushed my 3-year-old friend's hair off his face, and he was like, don't do that. And I was like, okay, thank you for telling me. Like, he knows he has the right to, like, he has body boundaries and he has the right to communicate with me, and then I will adjust, and so it again, just like developing that culture of consent in your family and your community in general, so people know, like, body boundaries, all my boundaries are important regardless, even if it's not about touch, can help really create a culture of consent.
Yeah, my own space. Like, my grandson hates for you to walk in the bathroom on him. Yeah. One day I was like, you'll be okay, shut the shower curtain. He was like, Gigi, no. And I was like, oh man. I said, okay, well, let me hurry up. Let me know when you're done.
Yeah.
He had the right to say no. He didn't want me to come in the bathroom, even if he was going to shut the shower curtain. And I had to respect that. And I don't think that all the times that we always respect the boundaries of our children or our grandchildren, or our nieces and nephews.
So and the funniest thing I'm experiencing, and I'm sure so many people who raise kids get this, is that I work so hard to teach the kids in my life that their bodies and boundaries deserve to be respected, but they don't respect my body and my boundaries. Which they're learning. It's like a constant reminder, but I'm just like, come on, guys, like, I want you to give back a little.
And I think we got to have conversations that make it normal. Yeah, it's not normal. That we should always have. One thing I want parents to know is, don't ever tell your children that you're going to harm the person that is abusing them.
Right.
Because then they won't tell you. Tell them things like, we'll go to the police together, we'll have a conversation together, and find safe spaces. So it's so important. But you have to look at the circle that your children are in, because it is cousins. Like, when I was growing up, all the cousins was in the room while the adults was playing, playing cards or gambling, whatever they were doing. And the kids was always together. But we don't leave kids in the room. We don't shut the door. Like, you trust anybody. And even with the boys and girls, if you have children, you can't trust them alone like that. You really have to have that conversation.
That's such a great point. Child-on-child sexual abuse, or what we call COXA, or sibling sexual abuse and trauma, are so much more common than people realize, because children spend so much unsupervised time together, and so often they're not getting proper sex education or body boundaries, sexuality education at home or in school. And so there is so much child-on-child sexual abuse. And an open door policy is a really good way to help reduce that risk. just making sure if there's ever a kid in the room with another kid or with an adult, whoever, that we, doors don't get closed, just so that, it, like, you can kind of walk in at any time. There's like a sense that someone is supervising you, even if they're around the corner.
We don't close doors. We don't secrets, right? Kara, thank you. She said this is an interesting thank you for this conversation is what she said. And hey, Kim and Dr. Tina said, thank you for sharing this much needed conversation. And you're welcome. I don't think that we talk about it enough. We do not talk about it enough. And do you think that mentally that is harder when it's in the family? Have you seen that people struggle more when it's the closer the abuser is in the family to the individual, the closer the relationship is what I'm trying to say. Do you see that people have different challenges?
Yeah, I try to be careful not to kind of compare, trauma, like one is worse than the other, but I would say that it's different. And only because in the United States, especially, like the nuclear family is so protected. And often, especially in white communities, like if you don't have family, you don't have anyone. Like white communities don't always have like extended networks of care like other historically marginalized populations do. And so there is just this like sense of, I'm dependent on these people. If I don't have them, I have no one. Where do I go? What do I do? Obviously, like our welfare programs aren't really all that helpful for people in crisis. So there's a lot. And I also think that like being abused in the home or being abused serially is like a level of conditioning. Like they talk about grooming a lot in the child sexual abuse prevention field, that people outside the home or extra familial sexual abuse, they'll groom in order to get access to the child and to keep access to the child. But if it's happening in your home, they don't need to groom you for access. You already have access. And so there's not like, you don't need to trust your loved ones. They just have access to you. They make it very normal. It becomes a very normal part of your life and your upbringing. And they really condition you to believe like, this is what you're meant for. This is what you're made for. And that is really hard to unravel. And I'll say from my own personal experience, like I've done a lot of work and had a lot of privilege when it comes to therapy and like the various things I've been able to explore in order to heal. And still very foundationally, I feel like there's something wrong with my existence, or my existence is only to kind of like serve or sacrifice, because I was taught that from such a young age. So it takes a lot of rewiring and world rebuilding when it's incest, in a way that it may also take for extra familial sexual abuse survivors. I don't want to assume, but I do see that in the incest community is there's just this all-encompassing nature of it, because we couldn't compartmentalize, and it was everything for so long for us.
Yeah. And I don't think that people understand the difference. So the things that you just identified, Kim said this is great information. Thank you, Kim. The things that you identified are different. They are different. Like me, being a victim, I was able to go home and never have to see and deal with him like that. But if it's in the home, this is like every day. I'm seeing you every single day and I can't get away from you. And so it's to just kind of point those things out. Right.
Yeah.
You can go
ahead.
Mm-mm.
I was just going to say, Judith Herman talks about that. She wrote a great book called Trauma and Recovery. And she writes about how children growing up in incest homes, but especially like any child who's experiencing some sort of domestic violence within their home, is essentially growing up in a war zone, and that our brains are wired in very similar ways to people's brains who are genocide survivors or prisoners of war, or people who have had serial trauma where there was no way out for a really long time. And yet we don't, as a society, tend to like take sexual violence within the home or domestic violence as seriously as we do these other forms of combat trauma. So I say that just to help people understand the severity of growing up in a place where you're not safe is really what happens is your brain safety is learned. It's not intrinsic. And so you have to learn what safety is. And if you never learn it, then it makes for a really chaotic nervous system, and it makes for a really difficult life in a world that is so complicated anyway, right? So how do you find safety if you don't even know what it looks like or what it feels like? How do you find safety when the thing that feels most like home or the most like love is violence? Like, that's hard stuff to unravel.
It's one of those things that people don't understand, but I'm glad that we're having a conversation so that they can, so that you can understand the dynamic. I got one question for you. What type of home, like, did you grow up in poverty? Did you grow up middle class? Because I think people judge that. How did you grow up?
Yeah, I think that's the thing about incest is that it impacts people in all racial, class, economic divides, you know, and so I grew up in a really wealthy family. I grew up on the ocean in Southern California. My dad was an entrepreneur who, you know, at one point made millions, and it's been interesting connecting with other incest survivor activists who grew up really differently than me, because depending on the context, I often have to kind of like make people understand or believe that it's happening in wealthy white homes, because there's just an assumption that like people who are wealthy and white would never do something like that. Whereas people who are members of historically marginalized populations have to really wrestle with the fact that they want to talk about intracommunal harm, so harm that's been done to them by other members of their community, but they don't want to contribute to the bias and stigma and prejudice that's already being oppressing the community. And so it's like, I want, you know, like I have friends who are like, I want to be honest about this, but I also don't want to contribute to this stigma. And so it's such a kind of a different struggle depending on the context that you're raised in and the, you know, the social circumstances and privileges we all hold.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to point that out because it doesn't matter what your family look like, your status. Kim said rich or poor, black, brown, white, it can happen to anyone. Exactly. And I think there's some stigmas where we don't talk about it from that standpoint, or we want to point the finger like it's not our community. It's not our people doing it, you know? There's no way that you could be rich and that you would do this, right? And so I think that it's important. And I've seen people talk about incest as if it's a poverty thing, that it only happens for communities, and that is not true. Okay.
Not true.
Mary, she says, so glad to get to listen to this. I'm glad you joined today as well, because we need to have this coming together and out. Come together and get it out. So this is our time to come together and get it out. All right. So what did healing look like for you, Jo? What does healing look like for you?
Yeah, it's looked like so many things, you know, in the beginning. So before the memories came back, it was like just trying to figure out what was wrong, you know, which was its own challenge. And then once the memories came back, I had a little more information, which was helpful. Like I could go to doctors, clinicians, physicians and say, I was incested. Like, now what? These are all my symptoms. And I engaged, you know, all the trauma, the kind of PTSD related healing modalities, EMDR, CBT, and tapping, etc., you know, and found them to be helpful to a point. I really felt like therapy kind of created a new baseline for me, but it didn't like give me a life worth living. So I would say once I had this kind of new baseline, where I could just like take care of myself and meet my basic needs and like continue to live, it was really friendship and peer-to-peer support with other survivors that really helped me to find a life that felt fulfilling enough to kind of keep fighting for. And so when I talk to people about healing, I'm always like, find the thing that works for you. When it stops working, find the new thing, you know, and just keep going. But mostly I think creating a really intimate community of care that's long term is really important, especially for nervous systems that are learning what safety is and may need to be reassured a lot. Like even my safest relationships, I still have to ask for a lot of reassurance. And my friends know that about me, and they're really patient with me, which is something I appreciate.
I think it's important to be honest with your friends. Right?
Mhm.
Information and to talk about it so that they know, like, when you don't feel safe, how to
Right.
make you feel safe, how to make you feel secure, what to say. I always say things like, you should say, how can I help you, what do you need from me?
Mhm.
Like, those are the main things, the two questions that you should ask. But I do think that friendships, because mine, that's really what helped held me down too, was good friends. It was really good friendships.
Yeah,
um
listen, friends are free, like
were
as long
you
as you have access, you don't have to pay out of pocket for friendship.
You don't
So
have to pay for friendships. Yeah, good friends, good friends.
yeah, that's
Um,
right.
Counseling. Did you ever find like that perfect counselor for you? The perfect therapist, the perfect psychiatrist. Did you?
No, I would say I had one therapist who really saved my life, and she was my EMDR therapist pretty early on in my healing journey after I recovered the memories. And I really looked to her as kind of like my main source of authority for a long time. I would say we started to butt heads a bit when I wasn't getting better at the rate she wanted me to. And there was kind of this attitude of like, well, like, uh, you know, it wasn't as if she was blaming me, but she wasn't holding the complexity of my life, especially within like the social context I lived in and we all live in, which is like a context of a lot of patriarchy and oppression and sexual violence. So she wasn't kind of bringing the sociocultural or social justice element into her practice that I really needed. So we stopped working together, but I also moved around a lot. So we had to stop working together. We ended up having a really healing conversation, though, a few years ago. I called her to ask her a very specific question, and she apologized to me for that. She's like, hey, I wanted to apologize. I think I approached your therapy as very individualistic and kind of missed the social justice cultural component that kept you spinning or kept you symptomatic, and I'm sorry. And so I just really appreciated that she acknowledged that.
Yeah. Um, Always don't give up. Like, there's somebody out there for you. Sometimes we give
Mhm.
up. Like, going back to counseling. But I also think we should be with a counselor, therapist, psychiatrist that wants us to heal. That's
Yeah,
not just trying to medicate us, not trying to help us get better. I think it's important to really look at that. Toya said, this is great info. Thank you, Toya. And Kim said, my friends helped me so much. It's nothing like a good village that supports and encourages your healing. I even found that we were able to support each other because they had their own trauma they were being silent about. Indeed.
that's right.
Indeed. So how we could support each other. Okay. So where are you today, Joe? What is it like? What is it like for Joe today? After going through all of the crap with your family, realizing that your father and other family members harmed you, didn't protect you. What is it like today for Joe?
I love that question, and it comes at a good time. I feel like my life has come full circle. So as you know, Dr. Vanessa, I grew up in California on the beach in Southern California, and like essentially ran away from home when I was 22, 23 to go to grad school, and like never really went back after that. And but like loved where I grew up in a lot of ways, and like loved the ocean, and had this kind of deep connection with living this certain lifestyle. um and so I'm now living on the beach again after kind of a 20-year hiatus in Northern California, and in a much more diverse, politically progressive environment, which I appreciate. But then like the people I chose to be family live not far from me. And it's so beautiful to see my life come full circle, where like I get to go be with the ocean every morning, which is like such a sacred time of day. That I would say the ocean was kind of my first therapist. Like whenever I was struggling growing up, I would like ride my bike to the ocean and just stare at it, and it would make me feel better. But then two, being part of such a healthy family system as kind of like a fourth wheel, because there's the two adults and the kiddo. is such a gift to me that they trust me so much and that I'm learning to trust them. And it's really beautiful to watch their kid grow up and be such a active part of his childhood. I feel like I'm getting kind of the opportunity to start over with him in some ways. Like I get to learn about so many things that I didn't learn about or haven't had the capacity to remember when I was a kid, since I was a kid, like the names of plants and trees and whatever, how things work. But also it's really been very beautiful to experience what it's like for a kid to be raised in a safe home and then juxtapose it with my upbringing and then like try to continue to make sense of how I teach a child about body boundaries. And when he says, why do I need those? Because he has no concept that an adult would hurt him. Like he just cannot wrap his head around a world where an adult would harm him. It is such a different thing than my life growing up where like I couldn't imagine an adult wouldn't harm me, you know? So I wobble, like I feel so grateful for my life and I did a lot of liberation labor to get here and I had a lot of support. And I'm very grateful. I'm very tired. I feel like, you know, I've run this relay and I'm like at the end of the race and just exhausted now. But really feel very happy where I've landed and want more and more to just help make both the liberation journey and the landing pad easier for people to find, to stay on, so that it's easier for the next generation than it was for me.
Yeah. When we advocate, we get tired.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, you're never tired. I am tired. We do get tired, especially when we have people pushing back against the great work that we're doing, when we're trying to make a difference and people are not listening, like the politicians are not listening, or people just blow it off like, oh no, this never going to happen to me and my family, or that had never happened to me, or they're not ready to even come forward and say that it has. There's a lot of individuals in our world, not just in our country, that experience incest.
Mm-hmm.
They're not ready to come forward, and that's fine. But that's why we advocate and we push hard. Okay, what's next for incest? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say something I've realized recently is that I think a lot of the stigma around incest specifically isn't that it's so unfamiliar to people, but actually that it's so familiar to people. And so many of us don't know how to hold it and don't know how to talk about it, but it is our lived experience, or we're so close to the issue. And it just feels so hot, you know, and like nobody wants to get burned. And that was a big realization to be like, I think this is something a lot of us have in common. And if we can just learn to sit with it and talk about it, then like we might feel a sense of solidarity and we might feel a sense of empowerment to move out of it.
So much better. Yeah. People don't realize that it's like freeing to be able to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to individuals that have experienced incest within their family, been violated? What advice would you give them?
You know, it's hard to give advice out of context, but I would just say, you know, I really love design thinking principles when it comes to thinking about designing your own liberation journey. So, you know, where do you live? What are the laws in your state when it comes to youth liberation or statutes of limitation or reporting, mandated reporters, etc.? Like, how do you find the healing resources that are available to you that you can afford? I think the one thing I would really say, and this is difficult, but like your family does not need to be your concern. You know, like there's such a protection and a glorification of the nuclear family system here. And I just think to say, like, find supportive people and they might not be your family. And that's going to be so hard and so painful. And there's so much grief there. And like grieve later, you know, like just find people who are unconditionally supportive because it's so hard. And it will be so much easier if you have the support and you don't have to do extra labor of like trying to teach people that you shouldn't have been incested, which was so much of what it can be like trying to transform family systems. But again, everyone's stories are different, and some people's families are really supportive. So if you find those allies in your family, then that's awesome.
I don't want you to hesitate telling people sometimes you have to walk away from the people that are still harming you mentally and physically. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that. And then sometimes it's family, and sometimes you got to walk away. And it's okay. You might get to come back and bring the family together, or you may never. But
Right.
What you said about the family is not more important than them. They're the most important person in the universe.
Yeah, so it's like establish safety in whatever way you can first, and then like worry about all that other stuff second, you know?
All right. So I want to talk about Incest Awareness Day. Can you tell us about Incest Awareness Day? Because we're going to make sure that we promote it and hype it up. And it's the first one. So tell us about Incest Awareness Day.
It's the first one as far as we know, you know. Incest awareness has a deep and beautiful history that has been repressed, you know, or erased. And so we're trying to uncover that as a movement. But as far as we know, we are partnering with Danny Carpio over at Healing and CPTSD to launch Incest Awareness Day on April 21st. Another big incest-related awareness day is coming up on April 15th. That's called hashtag Siblings 2 Day, which specifically observes sibling sexual abuse and trauma. But yeah, you know, I was asking myself, like, what does Incest Awareness Day mean to me? And a part of me is like, I'm so proud we have it. I'm so proud I'm a part of an organizing team that believes we can do this and that this matters and makes a difference. And I'm so angry that it's necessary, you know, like, why don't we already have one when incest has been such a common social issue for so long? Why didn't someone start this in the past? And why isn't it still with us? Why did I have to be the one to do it? You know, like that's always the counter narrative. But yeah, we really just want to invite people to the work, you know, that you can't really solve incest unless you solve a lot of other social problems, because incest is going to happen wherever there's social injustice or oppression. And so it's a really great issue to get involved in that hits on a lot of intersections with other social issues. A lot of people are looking, you know, there's a lot going on right now in the world globally, but especially in the United States. And a lot of people are looking for ways to engage and get involved in community. And I think the incest, you know, grassroots organizing around incest is a really meaningful place to get involved in. People, you know, you can't come to this table with a lot of ego, because when the world doesn't care about your cause, the only thing that brings you there is care, right? When the world won't pay you or fund your cause, like the only thing that brings you to that table is care. So the movement attracts some really beautiful people, and we're really kind of willing to wobble with each other in the work, both as survivors and allies. So I find it's like not an easy space. Like, it's obviously difficult, but it's a breath of fresh air to be around people who just like talk honestly about things. There's no masks, you know, and just do our best every day within the constraints that we have.
That's it. Do our best every day. Will it always be April 21st, or to be different days in April? Is it always going to be April 21st?
As far as I know, it'll always be April 21st.
Yeah. Always 21st.
Yeah. Unless some organizer wants to change it in the future, which they, you know, they'll have the freedom to do that.
All right. Incestaware.org is her website. Is there anything that you want to share or say on how they can contact you, or even to be able to get your book?
Yeah. So on incestaware.org, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to get involved in Incest Awareness Day, just go to the events tab. Don't go on your cell phone. I just rebuilt the website. So still working on the mobile version, but your desktop, it will look very nice. Otherwise, I'm serially publishing my memoir as we speak. It's called The Home I Know, A Liberation Story, and it's published on Substack. You can go to Josephine Ann, just my first and middle name, Ann with an E.com, if you'd like to read my memoir. Otherwise, You can sign up for Incest Aware's newsletter list if you want to know what's going on. You can join the Incest Aware Alliance if you want to do anti-incest organizing publicly. We meet every other month or so. Dr. Vanessa is a part of the alliance. Yay. And then we just launched a incest survivor support group for adults within the Healing and CPTSD trauma hub. And so if you want to join a support group, you are welcome. Otherwise, you can always donate to the cause as a way to be involved as well.
I love it. I love it. Please check out incestaware.org. This is a great website, great information, statistics. It's hard to find statistics on incest. So they're a great source. They love everybody. Everybody's accepted. That's what I love about it. It's for everybody, for allies and for survivors. And if you're just looking for that at home, to be able to get some support. Angela said, thank you for the insight on this subject. You're welcome. And May just sent a whole lot of love to you, Jo. And Kim said, I love this. Thank you for the conversation, ladies. Y'all are welcome. Thank you, Jo. You just made my heart smile for just being so open and sharing about, just your journey and where you are today, because there's hope. I want to make sure that I give people hope, not just talking about the sad part of what happened, but how you can get to the next level. And you mission accomplished, because that's exactly what you did today.
Yeah, right. I feel our friendship is so much a signal of hope, right? That it's like we get to be together in the world. And unfortunately, it was incest or this subject that brought us together. But I'm just so glad we're here, So yeah, y'all join us. We're a good group.
I love it. All right, I got something to share with y'all. I have a surprise, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of a surprise. We were blessed by Queen Kimmy with a song called Warrior Soul. And it is a song that is based on partially her life, partially my life, being military veterans and just from sexual trauma. And we're going to have a world premiere of the video, the audio visuals for it on April the 12th at 3 p.m. I will drop the link in the comments so that you can sign up. It'll be a Zoom. We're really excited about it because every download, if you download it on Apple, Spotify, if you watch it on YouTube, if you use it as part of one of your songs, we actually get credit for it, right? So this is a fundraiser that Queen Kimmy did for Hush No More. So what I'm going to do is play just a snippet of it for y'all to give you an idea of what we're working with. All right. And I want to see y'all April 12th. Rise from the pain to turn all the hurt into healing rain. It takes a warrior's heart to face the night alone and still walk out shining like golden stone. She's the proof that broken can still be whole. That's the power of a warrior soul. All right, that is Warrior Soul. Our premiere is next Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can sign up for the Zoom. We would love for you to come. If you can, download the, what we call them, soundtracks now. My kids always laugh. Download it, stream it. You can make a video from it, but it's called Warrior Soul. You can check it out, but we'll have the audio visuals coming this weekend. And so I'm so excited. We've been doing some amazing work. And that's what we do. And also, it's going to represent Pele Hunkin because she's the warrior heart. So I'm the warrior soul. She's the warrior heart. And thank y'all for just chiming in and download it, share it. We get more credit for it. And I'm really, really grateful for Warrior Soul. And May is doing all of the promotions for it. So you could check her out too. Angela says she loved the visual. Thank you, Angela. So I love y'all. Peace and blessings to you. It's called A Warrior Soul. You could type in Dr. Vanessa. It'll come up on all streaming platforms. Like, this is big, y'all. So we're grateful. I'm grateful to Jo. I'm grateful to Incest Aware and all the work that they do. I'm excited about Incest Awareness Day, April 21st. So make sure that y'all can even make a comment, post. We'll have a post that y'all can share. But raise awareness and show love and kindness to those who are still struggling or those who are on the other side of healing. So peace and blessings to you all. One team, one fight. We got this. No matter what you're going through, remember that you have a right to tell it and you got a right to heal. Peace.
Thanks, everyone.